All right, so we're down to 5-handed. Stacks are starting to get short. As you see, Zhang has only 20 big blinds. The other players still have a decent amount of chips, but we're getting shorter. So here, Walter elects to open under the gun. And then Dimitri 3-bets the ace-jack offsuit. I imagine he's doing this to fold to a jam. I imagine Walter will jam, especially given this ICM implication. Trying to think about what I would do in this spot. I think I may just call the pre-flop raise because you really want Zhang in the pot at this point. And if Zhang jams and Walter shoves, you can easily fold. If Zhang shoves and Walter folds, you can easily call. So Dimitri's giving up that scenario in exchange for this scenario, which is 3-betting with the intention of folding to a shove. I assume he's going to fold to a shove. That could be wrong, but I assume that's what's happening. I imagine the other scenario is just going to be more profitable, but I could be wrong about that one. And he does fold. So he took a hand that had a lot of equity and turned it into a bluff. Maybe he felt like the hand did not have a lot of equity. I mean, it's not the best hand ever, but it's certainly acceptable. I'm surprised at that one. I think that's the spot where stack sizes are very, very relevant. Yeah. Well, we'll get like selling a no limit hold'em. Here we are. This is a book I wrote with all of these people. We have a few Global Poker League members. We have Olivier Bousquet. We have Liv Bory. We have Chris Moneymaker. We have myself. Any down there? I don't think so. But anyway, my chapter in this book, let me find the exact title. I actually have 2 chapters. One of them is on when to value bet and when not to value bet. And the other one is on tackling the final table. It's somewhere in there. Trust me on it. And I discuss in this about how stack sizes are incredibly relevant. And this is a spot that does come up that's probably addressed in the book, where when there's a guy who's short here, you can easily call the ace-jack knowing that this guy's going to shove somewhat wide. Not super wide, but somewhat wide. But also, you have the benefit of you actually want this guy in the pot, because I think Zhang has less experience than the other players. I think that's safe to say. It's not an insult to him. It's just the case. It's just true. So knowing that's just true, I think you want to keep him in the pot. So if you call and he calls, that's great. If you call, he shoves, and then Walter shoves, that's okay. You're probably in bad shape versus Walter's shoving range, and you can fold and lose 2 big blinds. If you re-raise, though, now Zhang's going to play straightforward. Notice he had ace-7. Maybe he shoves ace-7 for all we know. And then Walter has the opportunity to jam on you, because now you're not going to want to go broke before Zhang goes broke, because Zhang is a little bit shorter. So I really dislike that play. I'm sticking with my play on that one. I think my play's better. Brewhouse says, poker is like a 4D puzzle. 3 puzzles at a time with missing pieces and blurry colors. Yeah, math will help you. So anyway, I don't like that strategy. If you want this book, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em, you can go to hold'embook.com. There's also a free bonus chapter on short stacked heads up no limit play, which will be very helpful if you ever find yourself heads up. I actually made a huge chart that I use every time I'm playing heads up on the Global Poker League that is very beneficial. All right, so Zhang opens. Walter's going to re-raise and call off, I imagine. So here it's a little bit different, where Walter now doesn't want to call because that's going to let Davidi call with all of his hands, which is not really where you want to be. And ace-jack can easily get in versus a 20 big blind stack shove. So they will be getting it in here, I imagine. I think Zhang just has an easy all-in, no-brainer pretty much. He did get it in, as expected. He'll get a double. But yeah, the stack sizes are incredibly relevant. That's actually one of the premises of my first book that I wrote, Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, that you need to know how to play all the stack sizes well. And it's not just your stack size you're playing, it's everyone's stack size. Notice here, Davidi folded queen 10 offsuit. That's a spot where I think he would often limp, or at least play the hand, but Igor has a bigger stack, so Igor can apply a lot of pressure. And for that reason, Davidi needs to be a little bit tight, given there are a few shorter stacks in him. When you're a middle stack, you just want to hang out. You don't want to do anything too ridiculous. And I think Davidi realizes that. So will this ace-6 raise? I imagine this ace-6 should probably just fold. Again, if you go back to just the standard pre-flop opening charts from the cutoff, you'll see the ace-6 offsuit is in there, so I guess that's okay. Let's look at standard range. You see ace-6 offsuit's not in a standard range, so it's in a loose range, not in a standard range, which kind of implies that you could go either way with it. And when you're in a scenario like this, where there are shorter stacks and you're trying to not go broke, you should probably be a little bit tighter. There are a lot of scenarios where you want to ask yourself, are the factors in my favor for me to be looser or tighter than normal? If the stacks were set up differently, say Igor had 30,000 and Walter had 45,000, I actually would say to raise the ace-6 offsuit, because then the factors are in Walter's favor. But here they are not in his favor. I like a limping strategy from small blind. I think that's just good, solid poker. Probably not the best flop to bet. You should probably go for it on the river with the 4 high. At this point, you can make your opponent fold out 8 high, jack high, stuff like that. So I think you want to bet there on the river, and Igor does. I want to thank all of you for being here today. Hope you're enjoying the stream. My next stream is not going to be for about 2 weeks. I'm going to Florida for the Hard Rock tournaments. So my next stream is going to be a home game. I have a free home game everyone can play. Information's right below here. Also, jonathanlittlepoker.com/homegame. That's going to be at 4 p.m. on the 22nd of this month. Then on the 23rd at 9 a.m., we're going to stream another Global Poker League review. Then on the 26th, we're going to be streaming another Global Poker League review at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. All these are Eastern Time. Those should be below the video on Twitch. So make sure you come. All right, so Zhang likes to limp. I think that's fine. Limp bets. I think this is an okay hand to check call. Notice this hand, your opponent's never folding a better hand, right? They're probably folding all queen highs. Well, bad queen highs at least. And you have the king of diamonds, which is actually a really good card, because if you check, and it goes check, check, and a diamond peels off, then I think you're pretty happy. Yeah, I would just check this one. I think this is a nice hand to have in the checking range. What's the best food I ate this week? We had a housewarming. We moved into our apartment about, I guess, 3 months ago now. We had a housewarming with my wife's parents and family and friends. I went to this Persian grill, and Amy, my wife, ordered some kind of pomegranate chicken, and it was amazing. I had the leftovers. It was good. I would eat it again if I had more of it. Maybe I know where I'm going for lunch now. Wow, maybe they deliver. If I could get that delivered every day, I would be so happy. So the issue here with this king high is that if Zhang cannot expect an ace, a 10, or a 9 to fold by the river. So for that reason, I don't like betting here. It'd be a little bit different if the flop was something like ace 6, 3, because then you can kind of expect the 6 or the 3 to be able to fold by the river a lot of the time. But here, the board's not going to get so bad for a 10 or a 9 that it's going to have to fold every time by the river. So I think you just want to be checking this. So now does Walter turn this hand into a bluff? I don't know. I think, yeah. So the king high obviously has some value. You're only going to get called when you're beat. But maybe you still want to value bet this. Well, / small bet this. Small bet this for protection from random cards. I don't know. Interested to see what Walter does here. I think I would probably make a small bet in this scenario, but I could see checking being perfectly fine. He does, well, a little bit bigger than a small bet. So he does make the small bet and gets the fold, so he bluffs the opponent off a chop. I think I would have bet even smaller there, something like 1,000. So I would definitely implement a limping strategy. We've discussed this a lot at pokercoaching.com. If you've not checked out pokercoaching.com, is it that way? Yeah, that way. Pokercoaching.com. Every week we have a homework question, and one of the more recent homework questions was, everyone folds to you in the small blind with 100 big blind stack. You are against a world-class player in the big blind. You play well enough, your opponent thinks you play well. Define your strategy with each part of your range. And I got a really wide range of answers. Everyone who submits their answer at pokercoaching.com, I go through and I personally look at it, discuss it in a webinar. We do, I think our last webinar was 3 hours long, something like that. So we do pretty long webinars. And a lot of people were suggesting just raise with their best hands and fold their not so good hands. And I think that's a pretty big disaster. A lot of people were suggesting that because the player in the big blind is great, they're going to outplay you every time, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the optimal strategy is to be limping with a lot of stuff and develop a limp re-raising range, limp calling range, limp folding range. Let me see if I can actually find the webinar real quick. The PowerPoint, at least. I think it was June. All right, here it is. Perfect. So here is what I was suggesting. I'm not going to go through this too in depth. But this is the limping range I would suggest from the small blind. As you can see, it's pretty wide. And then we break that up into a limp folding range, just the absolute garbage. If we limp, they make a regular raise. If they min raise, you stick around, obviously. But if they make a regular raise, you call. Then we have a limp re-raising range, which includes your best hands for value, and then a bunch of these hands that don't really flop so well. Fun limp re-raising range. And then we have a limp calling range. And these are, there's still plenty of value hands in this. We have king, queen, ace 10, ace 9, a lot of the aces. And so if you look at this, all these ranges are going to be pretty difficult to deal with. The folding range is garbage, that's fine. If you limp re-raise this range, it's fairly balanced between bluffs that flop well enough, a few total diapers, and then some nut hands. And then this hand, the limp calling range is also very strong. So anyway, that's the strategy I'm implementing. King 10 offsuit would be a limp calling hand. Obviously, things change a little bit as stacks get deeper and we playing with ICM implications. But I think that's a pretty strong range. It's hard to do anything about. Often your opponent's just going to check, which is also fine. Kitten Poker says, poker coaching is awesome. Well, good. I'm glad you enjoy it. So notice Walter does check a limp call, as we suggest. I like that. Seems like a nice strategy. We also just launched the Inner Circle at pokercoaching.com/inner circle, where I'll have office hours effectively, where you can get online and ask me your questions in real time, whatever's going on. It's almost like a miniature coaching session. So if you're into that, check that out. Also, we do homework. We do interactive quizzes. You can actually go to jonathanlowpoker.com/PC. I think that link should work. It takes you to a video where I kind of explain the base level of poker coaching and everything you get there. So check it out. So it goes check on the turn. The river's a 2. So now should Walter turn this hand into a bluff? He check called flop, check turn. Here we are on the river. Should he try to make a 7 fold? I don't know if a 7's going to fold. He obviously wants to try to make ace high fold. And he obviously wants to try to make pocket 4s fold. So I think this is probably a good enough hand to turn into a bluff. Notice there are very few hands Davidi could actually have here that lose. Like 10-9, and 10-9 may bluff you anyway. So I think Walter does want to turn this hand into a bluff on the river. The problem is he's going to get called a lot because of obvious flush draw and obvious straight draw missed. But I think if you bet something like 5,000, that's going to get some folds sometimes. He does like to just check, though. I think that's a little bit weak. I would have gone for it there, I think. And Davidi wins. Davidi has an easy check on the river because if he bets, he's going to get called by a lot of better hands. Maybe he makes pocket 5s fold. Maybe he makes 8-7 fold, but he's going to get called every time by a queen or a jack. Or the various better hands that exist. Whereas if it goes check, he just beats all the draws and gets to see a cheap showdown. So that's a good spot to check. Yeah, I think Walter's hand was at the bottom of his range there. Also, he had no blockers to the various flush draws, which may or may not bet the turn, but if he has the ace-high flush draw, he probably is not going to bet the turn, and you want to make that hand fold. So I think that was an easy bluff spot there with the king 10. All right, so we see an open. Igor likes to just call, ace-4 suited. bets flop. Ace high is going to call. This is one of these spots where if you're betting the flop, I think you want to bet very small. This is where I really love the new kid strategy. Bet really small on the flop, like a fourth pot, then either bet small on the turn and then bet big on the river, or just check down. But here I think I would have gone for 3 streets because Igor's going to call with any pair and any ace high on the flop. He's going to fold some ace highs on the turn, but maybe stick around. But then if you fire that last bullet, he probably will fold. So I think I prefer 3 bets with this hand, the king high. Because you can't really expect Igor to check call the flop with queen high, right? In order to check down in the spot, you either have to think Igor is just an extreme calling station, or you have to think, well, I guess he's going to call with queen high and then check it down. Is that really what you think is going to happen versus Igor? Probably not. He may call with king highs, but you lose to a lot of the king highs. And a lot of the king highs may decide to bluff anyway. So I don't really think that's a good strategy here. I think you'd rather turn this hand into a bluff by the river. But you have to do it for 3 streets. You can't just do it for 2 streets. If you do it for 2 streets, it's going to fail. 7-4 suited. You could fold this if you wanted. He does elect to fold. The reason he's folding here is if he raises, notice Dmitry has a nice shoving stack. And you also have the big stack, Igor, and the small blind. So if you open this, Igor's going to 3-bet a lot. And if you open this, Dmitry's going to shove a lot. And you have 7-4 suited, which cannot really withstand that pressure. So Igor does a limping strategy. I'm a little bit surprised Igor is checking so much with these nut low hands. I think I would just be betting the flop on ace queen X with a nut low hand, because if you limp here, you have to expect Dmitry to either raise or shove a lot of the aces. So you can discount those from his range. So now it's almost like you're playing a 2-card flop. And 2-card flop is pretty hard to hit. So now, I guess it's worth mentioning. Dmitry called or checked behind with the queen on the flop. I think that's great because this is one of these hands that you really don't want to put your whole stack in. You're fine playing a 6 or 8 big blind pot, but if all the money goes in, you're often in bad shape. So good check behind. Now he's going to call the turn. He's probably going to call on most rivers as well. I imagine Igor's going to bluff this river because he's trying to make Dmitry fold out king high, jack high, etc. of diamonds, maybe a pair of 10s. He does a small bet. All right, so you have to always ask yourself in Igor's shoes, what are you trying to make fold? I think when Igor makes a tiny bet like this, he's trying to make a king high fold, or a jack high fold, or a 9 high fold. I think I would have bet a little bit bigger, something like 3,000, to try to get a pair of 7s to fold and a pair of 10s to fold. Obviously, the queen's never folding, so he's just burning money every time in this spot. But I think he would have been better off betting bigger. I think this size will get king high to fold, though, so I don't really mind it. The way this works is you want to ask yourself, how many combinations of each type of hand does your opponent have? And this is something you could just spend hours and hours and hours on, but I imagine Dmitry has almost no aces. He has a bunch of queens. He has a bunch of 7s. He has a bunch of 10s. And he has a bunch of flush draws, all of which you lose to. So if there's a bet you can make that will make the pairs fold, I think you want to be making that bet. If there's not a bet you can make, like say he just calls 3,000, no problem with a 7, then you don't want to target that range. So you're instead trying to target the weaker range. And looking at the spot now, I actually do like Igor's bet better because I don't think we can count on Dmitry folding out a pair every time to a 3,000 or a 4,000 bet, given Igor's Igor. If Igor was a tight nitty player, then maybe a bet of 3,500 would be better. So in this spot, I actually like his bet because he's trying to make the unpaired hands fold. So I think this is a good bet size looking at it now, just because there are a bunch of unpaired hands. The Brewhouse says, check flop and 2 streets. Would that get ace X to fold on the 10-5-5-6-3 board? I don't know. So let's say it comes 10-5-5, you raise king 8. It goes check, check on the flop. On the turn, it's a 3. They check, you bet. They're going to call with ace high every time. River's a 6, you check. Or they check, you bet. Are they going to fold ace highs there? I don't know. I think they'll fold ace high for 3 streets, though. So that's one of these spots where, kind of like right there with Igor, we don't really know if he's going to fold a pair on the river. whenever you are not applying a lot of aggression, you don't really know if your opponent's going to fold ace high on the river for 2 bets. But if you put in 3 bets, they probably will. I mean, in that scenario, if Igor just goes bet, bet, jam, Dmitry may fold a queen on the river, which is sweet because then he's actually making Dmitry fold a very large portion of his range. Burrell says if you check the flop and then bet turn and bet river, it looks like ace X or a pair. Certainly does, but again, we don't want to make too many big assumptions about what our opponents think about us. But yeah, I agree. It does look a lot like ace X or a pair. I agree with that, but some people just don't care. They're like, oh, I have ace high. I'm calling. But yeah, I mean, I think that line would be okay. The issue is, though, is that if it goes check on the flop, quite often your opponent will then turn around and bluff the turn and bluff the river and make you fold out all of your ace highs. And that's a problem. You always want to make sure whenever you're looking at a line, don't just think this line is great because of blank. You have to look at every other scenario that happens. So if you bet the flop, if you bet the turn and the river, that implies you check the flop. So your opponent has the opportunity to bluff the turn and the river. And you can't do anything about it with king high or ace high. Unless you decide to call him down. All right, so stack sizes this way. I am shocked that Dmitry just raised this, or that Davidi just raised this. I was sitting here thinking that Igor should probably raise a 3-2 offsuit, but I would never have raised this 5-4 offsuit. But even then, you notice that Igor just snap folds. So Igor is not really ramping up the aggression because of stack sizes and table dynamics. Notice here that Igor has the chip lead with 45,000. The other players all have 20,000 or so. The other 3 players remaining in the hand. So Igor can apply a lot of pressure. I'm surprised he did not elect to apply pressure there. He just snap folded. Davidi is trying to take over the role of aggressor from... I'm probably saying these wrong names every time. Davidi is trying to take over the role of aggressor from Igor. And Igor's not the guy I'm trying to take over the role of aggressor from. Wow, and Zhang decides to 3-bet. I mean, that's just shocking. I don't know what's happening here. That's aggressive. That is aggressive. So I imagine Igor's going to be opening a lot of the time, anytime he has any hand that's anywhere near reasonable. Walter calls. This is a great hand to check call on the flop. I made a video recently on spots to check raise / not to check raise. And a lot of amateurs take a hand like this 9-8 suited here and check raise it because they don't want to get outdrawn. And in this scenario, notice Igor does have 20-something% equity that will outdraw you sometimes. But that's okay because you make your range look marginal, which is great. That's going to induce bluffs. You give your opponent all the opportunity to bluff, and you can't really get value from many worse hands if you check raise. So this is a great spot to check call. This hand may be good enough to check raise for value versus Igor, but probably not. So I like the check call. I think this is by far the best play by a mile. Same thing goes for hands like pocket fives. If you have a hand like ace 2, maybe you want to start check raising that as sort of a semi-bluff / protection hand. This hand just doesn't need that much protection. I realize any overcard is bad, but notice every overcard is not bad. A lot of people think that any overcard is a disaster, like ace, king, queen, jack, 10 are all bad, but actually only jack and 10 are bad this time. Of course, you're going to be somewhat flying blind a lot of the time, and you have to realize that flying blind is okay. You do not have to know where you stand every time. It's okay to not know where you stand. And look what's happening. It's like magic. This is exactly what we wanted to have happen. I imagine Walter should still just call. I don't think he needs to jam here. Once the bets start to become somewhat sizable, you should at least consider jamming, but I don't think it's necessary. Here. Then just check call the river. Easy game. Notice Igor does not decide to bluff here, probably because he thought that for Walter to call twice, he must have some sort of a pair. Notice the 2 pairs up on the river, so maybe he has some of those. He may fold a 3 on the river, but notice he's never folding a 9, and the 9 should make up way more of his range than 3s. So in that spot, these 2 kind of cancel each other out. Will he fold a 7? Probably shouldn't have too many 7s. So these 2 cancel each other out. He could easily have a 2. He could have ace high, but he probably would fold that to a turn bet. So he just must have some sort of a made hand, or 5-4 as you beat. So yeah, good check behind by Igor. Good no bluff. Flying blind from now on. Well, you just don't want to check raise hands that can only get called when you're beat. That's really the gist of it, is that if you check raise, you want to have a very clear purpose. And if the check raise is to make hands that you demolish fold, that's not a good reason. You want to keep those hands in the pot. All right, so Zhang opens. Walter elects a 3-bet. I think that's good. Does Davidi blast him? King, queen. Wow, you know what? A lot just happened very quickly here. Zhang opened and Walter 3-bet very fast. I would actually think that's some sort of a timing tell. I think I would have jammed here in Davidi's shoes. This is a spot where he can apply immense pressure to these two players. He's going to win the pot a ton. When he gets called, he's obviously not happy. But I think in this scenario, it's fine to just shove. Your opponents can't really do anything about it. Worst case, you lose 35 big blinds. I guess you get stacked. Worst case, you lose all of your money. But I think this is a pretty sweet spot to shove. We know Zhang opens too much. Walter has been caught 3-betting too much. I guess I should make this clear. These games are all on a 10-minute delay whenever you're actually playing them live. So you can watch the stream 10 minutes later. So these players know that both these guys are a little bit out of line and fighting versus each other. We know that Walter should be probably 3-betting all of his playable hands here because he doesn't want to let Davidi come in. So all that combined, I think, makes this a shove spot for Davidi. And for Walter, or for Zhang, what does Zhang do? I'd probably just jam if I was Zhang too. We've caught Walter playing really aggressively at you so far. So I think I would be jamming this. This is a spot where maybe I'm a little bit too happy to shove. I mean, I've gone broke in many spots like this. But I think the hand is okay. You're going to have some equity when you get called by like pocket sixes, right? So it's not like you're just dead with the ace 10. And I think you do have fold equity. And I think Walter's 3-betting some. But Zhang just folds. I mean, notice here, if Zhang folds ace 10, let's actually get out Equilab. Equilab's good for this. Zhang's folding ace 10. So let's think about what Zhang is opening with from the button. He's been pretty active, but let's assume he's not doing anything too ridiculous. Let's assume he's tightened up a little bit. So let's assume maybe he opens this. Maybe he doesn't open these. We're giving him a tighter range than I think he has. But let's assume he's opening this type of a range. Equilab helps you out a little bit and says this is 31% of hands. So knowing that's 31% of hands, let's now cut out all of the hands that are ace 10 and worse. All right, so we cut out all these, cut out all these, cut out all these. Maybe he goes ace 10 suited. Maybe he goes ace 9 suited. He's probably going with any pair. So notice this is now 12% of hands. So notice that this 3-bet from Walter needed to work. It went 1,600. He made it 45. So the pot was... Let's just rewind it. No, I'm not going to rewind it. So let's get out the calculator. Pot was 1,600 plus the blinds and the ante. So 1,600 plus 1,200 plus 500. So he's risking here 4,500 to win 3,300 on this bluff. So you add 45 to this equals. So now we do 45 divided by 78. So this bluff needs to work 57% of the time to show a profit. We already know, though, that Zhang is opening 33% of hands if he's tight, and he's continuing with about 11%. So that means that he's folding 66% of the time. So he's folding 66% of the time, and we only need him to fold 57% of the time. So if he's going to be defending that tightly versus this 3-bet, we have a very immediate 3-bet as a bluff. Also, we have an ace-x blocker, which we're not really accounting for, so he's actually going to defend more like 7 or 8 or 9% of the time. Just because we have the blocker in our hand, it makes it harder for him to have the good hands. Like, notice ace, king, ace. Oh, that's different. Ace, king, ace, queen, ace, jack, etc. These don't exist as much. What happened to my graph? Well, the graph is gone. And if he's opening wider than I just suggested, then he's going to be folding even more. So this is a very nice spot to 3-bet as a bluff if your opponent's going to be playing too tightly, which is why I suggested rip it in. I think ripping it in is a solution to this problem. But he folded and got exploited. Also, we're ignoring the times that Zhang decides to just call. we're acting as if Walter is just stone dead whenever he gets called, and I don't think that's the case. You're certainly not just stone dead. Obviously, he wasn't in good shape, but he still had 25% equity. You know, of course, he's going to bet the flop sometimes in that scenario and win the pot that way. So just a lot of good things happen for Walter in that spot by 3-betting. Also, if you recognize spots that buttons opening wide, small blinds 3-betting wide, you can then jam wide. And I think that's the spot where I think Davidi probably should have picked up on that one. I'm hard on Davidi because Davidi plays amazingly well. So maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I'm too aggressive. Igor does 3-bet. Seems fine. I imagine Walter's going to fold this. This is a hand I would not open, I don't think. I would just fold this on the button pretty much every time. Do you know who will be playing the first GPL match? Do you know who? Not sure what you're referring to. Decrypt me. The league's going to restart at some point in the near future. I do not know the schedule, but everyone in the GPL has played so far. And I've played 6 or 7 times at this point. You can actually watch all of my matches at JonathanLittlePoker/GPL. JonathanLittlePoker.com/GPL has all of my games that I've played. And one game that I commentated on. We're going to be wrapping up the stream in probably about 5 or 6 minutes. I have to get going. But we'll go through a few more hands. I enjoy how long it takes to go through these games. I think it's actually pretty sweet. I would probably fold this if I was in Davidi's shoes versus under the gun raise. But you can 3-bet it if you want. I don't really like calling here. I mean, if you call here, you're sort of saying that I'm just going to completely own this guy after the flop. And I don't think you can just completely own any player in the GPL after the flop. So Walter's going to shove this, I imagine. I think shoving's the only option. Hand's too good. Sometimes there are spots you're like, hand's too good. I'm shoving. And he does. So that's good. Pocket 2s for Igor. He's going to open this one up. Should Dimitri jam this? I would probably not, but I actually would not despise a shove here. If you expect Igor to be opening too often, you can then jam on him very, very often. Of course, that's better if you're in the blinds because you have fewer players yet to act. What I mean by that is, when Igor jams, these two players are going to pick up a nut hand some percentage of the time. You can actually figure out how often that is by going into Equilab. Equilab has all the answers. So, not all the answers, most of the answers. Assume they just always call off with these every single time. This is 5% of hands. Oh, you don't see them. This is 5% of hands. So 5% of the time, each player is going to call you. And even though it may be a very profitable shove versus Igor, with these two players yet to act, it may tip it to be unprofitable. So always be aware of that. Zhang is too deep to shove. I think I'd probably 3-bet in his spot. But maybe you should just fold this. The one time you should fold this is if you think Igor is going to jam on you very wide. And that could easily be the case. He's taking his time. Definitely make sure you do not have timing tells. Almost everyone has timing tells on the internet. It's hard not to. But you definitely do not want your either very fast bets or very slow bets to mean anything. And given Zhang is taking forever here, slow bet probably means something, which is marginal hand. And he folds. So should Walter defend this? I think he probably should. The hand's kind of junky, but it's suited. It's a min raise. Wow. Check, check, flop from Igor. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe I'm not. Well, let's one more time. We'll do Flopzilla. Flop is Queen, Jack, 4. Queen of spades, Jack of diamonds, 4 of spades. And we have 2 of spades, 2 of clubs. All right. So what is Walter's defending range on the pre-flop? Well, he defended 10-2 suited, so we know it must be kind of wide. It could look something like this. Probably 3-bets the best hands, if I had to guess. May 3-bet some bluffs, but we'll ignore the bluffs. So if his range is this, what is he going to call with on the flop? We're going to take out no made hand. Will he call with ace high on this board? Probably not. Will he call with any pair? We'll assume he does. Will he call with middle pair? Yes. Top pair? Yes, 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 yes. All right. Will he call with flush draws? Yes. Open and straight draw? Yes. Gut shots. The gut shots are mostly... Let's actually take out some of these. We'll take out the 10-8 suiteds. Or the 10-8s and the 9-8s. I think those are pretty bad. Overcards. 2-card backdoor flush draws. Will he call with all of the diamonds? Well, certainly not. Let's just take out all of these, but they're not all getting taken out normally. So this leaves him... Am I confused about something here? It says he's calling 85% of the time, but I don't think that's right. How is that possibly right? Well, I'm clearly doing something wrong here because he's not calling 85% of the time. If anyone knows the answer, let me know. It looks to me like he's going to call closer to 40% of the time. What is wrong with this? Let's take out everything. So where are these 40% of hands coming from? All right, so clearly something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. But anyway, what this amounts to is I think he's going to call... Oh, there we go. I fixed it. Okay. Let's go back and give him this. Weak pairs are going to call. Flush draws, open-end straight draws, some gut shots. All right, so something like this is what he's going to continue with, I think. So now this is about 47% of hands. Okay, now we have what we're looking for. Poker's hard. Poker study is even harder. All right, so of these hands that are going to call, we lose to most of them, but the hands that he's folding have a lot of equity versus pocket twos. And also, a lot of the hands that are going to check on the turn, I'm sorry, check on the flop. When he goes check on the flop, a lot of those hands are going to bluff the river, or bluff the turn, and put you in a pretty nasty spot. Bluff the turn plus the river, and you can't defend at all with pocket twos. So, I think you probably want to bet this. The one reason you may not want to bet this, though, is because notice, against this range, against the whole range, our pocket twos actually have 62% equity, which is great. If we bet and get called, though, we drop to 18% equity. That's a problem. So you have to figure out, is losing that much equity in your hand worth getting outplayed sometimes and getting outdrawn sometimes? So maybe we get outdrawn about 25% of the time, and maybe we get outplayed, let's say, another 15% of the time. So 40% of the time we lose if it goes check. And we also lose another 40% of the time when our opponent just has us beat. So I think we're actually even though it says we have 62% equity here, I'm not sure we actually do, because we're going to get outplayed. Say we get outplayed 15%, we get outdrawn 25%, and we are behind 40%. I'm not saying all these stats are additive. All these numbers are additive. You can't just add them up and say this is what we have. But I think we are going to end up losing this pot a lot if it goes check. I think you're better off just betting the flop. You're going to make him fold 50-something% of the time, which, you know, if you bet 2,000 on the flop, you're immediately showing a profit because he's going to fold 55% of the time, and you only need him to fold about a third of the time. So that's going to show an immediate profit. I think this is a scenario where you just want to take your immediate profit and go from there. Also, you could get value and then it could somehow check down by the river. So I think in this spot, I like a continuation bet. And I often do like continuation bets in spots like this where you have a very junky pair that has no real potential to improve, although it gets the 1 hour this time. I think this is a nice spot to bet the flop. I'd be more inclined to check with a hand like ace-4. Actually, let's go back and show it. Say instead of pocket twos, we have ace of hearts, 4 of hearts. Now, notice that we have... Now notice we have 70% equity, but when we do cut the equity, it goes to 30%. So instead of dropping to 18%, it's at 30% when we bet and get called. So that hand is still okay to bet, but I think its potential and the fact that it is ahead way more often on the flop, I think those two things make checking that one a little bit better. But, yeah, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you're mixing it up well. Fun stuff. Anyway, he bets the turn and Walter just folds. Sick fold. No action. That's another problem. You get there, you don't even get paid. All right. So that's going to be it for today. We got a nice 2 hours and change in of review. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me next time, feel free to write them down. My next stream, information is listed below on Twitch. But next stream is going to be on August 22nd. So a little while from now, about 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be playing in Florida. They have a bunch of poker tournaments. And I cannot commit to stream while I'm in poker. Maybe I'll stream for 2 hours if I find time, but internet's often bad in hotels, and I play a lot of poker. I'm busy. So next stream is going to be on... Let's see. You know what I could do? I'm actually gonna start the stream earlier on the 22nd. Let me edit this real quick. I'm trying to figure out how to work this calendar. Let's actually start at 2 p.m. Come on, computer. GPL/home game stream. Okay, so we're going to start on 2 p.m. on the 22nd. We're going to stream Global Poker League review for about 2 hours. Then we're going to play my home game. And then maybe in the home game, we continue doing more Global Poker League review. Then on the 23rd at 9 a.m., we'll do a review again. Then on the 26th at 3 p.m., we'll stream more Global Poker League. That's the plan. If I'm going to stream between now and then, I will post on Twitter at Jonathan Little. Make sure you follow me or subscribe or whatever it's called here on Twitch. I believe you have to be a subscriber to view the videos on demand, although I could be wrong about that. But they're all up there. All the Global Poker League games that I've done are available. And I hope you enjoy this. If you like this, tell your friends. Check out pokercoaching.com. And I'll talk to you next time.